The name Africa is not the true name of this soil. By the time this ends, you won't just know that fact, you will feel it. You'll feel it vibrating in your chest. Because this isn't a history lesson, it is a restoration. This land, the eldest land on the face of the earth, bore a name before Rome was a thought. It had a name before Greece was a civilization. It had a name while the rest of the world was still wrestling with the elements just to survive. That name was stripped away quietly, systematically, and with absolute intent. But before we reveal that name, and we will, you need to understand why the loss of it matters. You need to walk through the world that existed before the map was redrawn, because the name is just the surface. Beneath it lies a universe that has been hidden in plain sight. Let us travel back to when this land spoke for itself. The first truth people miss is that this land was never one thing. When people say Africa, they picture a single story, a single culture. But this land was a collection of civilizations so layered and complex that modern technology is only now beginning to uncover the blueprints of their genius. There were architects here carving stone, while others were still shaping mud. There were astronomers here mapping the stars with a precision that leaves modern scientists speechless. There were trade routes pulse-beating through the interior, connecting these hearts to Arabia, India, and China, not centuries ago, but millennia. There were legal codes, spiritual depths, and medical breakthroughs that became the silent foundations upon which other great civilizations built their towers. All of this flourished here, long before the word Africa was ever whispered. In the ancient north, where the land kisses the Mediterranean, lived the Numidians. If you don't know them, you haven't been told the full story. The Numidians were horsemen of legend. They rode without saddles, without bridles, commanding their steeds with nothing but their knees and their sheer force of will. They were the lightning in the storm of battle. When Hannibal crossed the Alps to bring Rome to its knees, it was the Numidian cavalry at his side, delivering the killing blows. Rome, the empire that claimed the world, trembled before them. The Numidian king, Jugurtha, humiliated Roman generals one after another in a guerrilla campaign so effective the Roman Senate admitted the war was draining the very lifeblood of the empire. A man from this land made the greatest power on earth look amateur. And the Numidians didn't call themselves Africans. They were people of this land, defined by their own pride and their own ancient identity. Then there was Carthage. If the Numidians made Rome nervous, Carthage made Rome terrified for its existence. Carthage was a maritime titan, a power built by masters of the sea who controlled the veins of trade across the Mediterranean. They had wealth that defied imagination and a reach that stretched from Spain deep into the continent's heart. Rome fought Carthage in 3 brutal existential wars, and even after victory, Rome wasn't satisfied. They didn't just want to win, they wanted to erase. They tore down every wall, they burned every record. They reportedly salted the earth so nothing would ever grow again. When an enemy has to delete your very memory to feel safe, that is the ultimate testament to your power. Further south sat Nubia, also known as Kush, a civilization older and perhaps deeper than Egypt itself. Nubia held more pyramids than Egypt, sharper, precise structures that still baffle engineers. They produced gold in such abundance it flowed like water, but they were no one's servant. They were Egypt's equal, and eventually they were Egypt's masters. The 25th dynasty, the Black Pharaohs who sat upon the world's most famous throne, were Nubian. They were the spine of the ancient world, yet in modern textbooks, this empire is lucky to get a footnote. The Greeks spoke of the Ethiopians. They didn't mean a single nation. They used it as a title of reverence for the people of this continent. The word meant burnt-faced, but it wasn't a slur, it was a mark of divinity. Homer, the greatest poet of the West, wrote that the people of this land were so noble, so righteous, that the gods of Olympus would leave heaven just to feast among them. The gods chose to eat with the people of this land.
That is what the cradle of civilization thought of this continent. And later, the Moors carried this ancient flame into a darkened Europe. In the 700s, they built a civilization in Spain that made the rest of the world look primitive. They built libraries with hundreds of thousands of volumes, while European kings could barely sign their names. They created street lighting and paved roads, while London and Paris were sinking in mud and darkness. They brought algebra, advanced medicine, and philosophy. Europe's Renaissance didn't happen by accident. It happened because they spent centuries learning from the masters of this land. This is what was here. This is who was here. So let's talk about the name, the Aphrike. Where did it come from? The Romans used the term Africa first to describe a single small province in what is now Tunisia, just one corner. But as European powers mapped the world, they stretched that provincial label across millions of square miles, dragging it over ancient empires until it smothered everything. Through slavery, colonization, and forced schooling, the people of this land were taught to identify themselves by the name their conquerors chose for administrative convenience. But look at the roots. The Greek word aphrike is often cited as the origin. Let's break it down. In ancient Greek, the prefix a means without, a negation. The root phrike means cold, but it also means horror. Cold and horror were the same concept to them. So aphrike, Africa, means without cold or without horror. Pause and think about that. The people naming this land were naming it based on their own fears. They looked at this continent and defined it by what it lacked, the biting, lethal winters of Europe. They didn't name the land for what it was. They named it for what it was not compared to them. They made their own experience the standard, and the mother of mankind became nothing more than the place where our winters don't happen. And yet, even in that outsider's name, the truth leaked through, without horror. Because while Europe was shivering through dark ages, plagues, and famines, this land was warm, this land was growing, this land was life. Even the people who came to exploit it had to admit in the very act of naming it that there was no horror here. They just couldn't bring themselves to use the name the land already had. The people of this land didn't need a Greek definition. They had a name that didn't describe them in relation to anyone else. It was a name spoken in their own voice, from their own understanding. That name is Alkebulan. Say it, let it sit in the air. Alkebulan. This is the name recorded by ancient scholars. This is the name used by the Moors. It existed, breathing and alive, long before Rome laid its first stone. Its meaning isn't about weather or temperature. Its meaning is Mother of Mankind, or Garden of Eden. It points to the ultimate truth. This land is the source. The first humans walked here. The first societies were structured here. The first attempt to find meaning in the stars began here. The people called it what it was, not a province, but the mother. On one side, you have Africa, a name rooted in what Europeans didn't have to suffer here. On the other, you have Alkebulan, a name rooted in what this land gave to the world. One is about absence, the other is about everything. This isn't a debate about linguistics, it's the difference between a stolen identity and a true one. It was no accident that Alkebulan was buried. It was a system designed to sever a people from their power. When you take a person's name, you take their story. You make them believe their history started when the discoverers arrived. That is the real horror, not the cold, but the erasure of memory. But the name survived because truth is stubborn. It survived in the manuscripts of scholars, in the oral traditions of elders, and in the work of historians like Dr. Yosef ben Yochanan, who dug through the rubble of lies to hand this truth back to you. Now you know. You know that the Numidians made empires bleed. You know that the gods of Greece came here to feast. And you know that none of them called this place Africa. They called it Alkebulan. The mother of mankind does not apologize for the greatness she produced, and neither should her children. If this shifted something inside you, Do not let the thread break here. Subscribe, because this is only the beginning of the story we are reclaiming. Share this with someone who still thinks Africa is just a word. A name is a history. A name is a destiny. The Greeks said this land was without horror. The ancestors said it was the mother of all. Now you know which one told the truth. Alkebulan is the true name. Remember it.